The Stock Movers Podcast, your roundup of companies making moves in the stock market, harnessing the power of Bloomberg data.
Now, should we have a look at the markets then briefly? Let's look at the European stocks. We're flat at the moment to slightly negative. FTSE 100 down 0.1%. As for US stock futures, they've tipped into the green this morning. So we really do have quite a muted reaction to this major event in the Middle East over the weekend. 439 for US yields up 1.5 basis points. Bloomberg dollar spot index also up by 0.3%. So that's a look at the markets.
OK, let's get a bit of a deeper dive in terms of some of the individual stocks on the move and bring in Bloomberg's equities reporter Joe Easton. Joe, we'll start with airlines, heavily influenced, of course, by the conflict in the Middle East. We've seen some changes in terms of routes, clearly concern there, but also the oil price being factored in. Who's being hit hardest at this point?
Yeah, so we're seeing pretty decent moves lower in all of the airlines today, really. So Lufthansa, we're down 1.1% on that one. Air France as well, 1.2% in the red. And also some of the short-haul airlines as well. So EasyJet, Ryanair slipping around the same amount as well. So it's a twofold thing. As you mentioned, it is both the issue of routes. We did see cancellations and a lot of the data, the flight data, showing actually a lot of planes diverted away from the Middle East, away from the parts of the Middle East that have been affected. We saw an update from British Airways, of IAG specifically, warning of some cancellations. So that is one element to it. And then the other element, of course, is the oil price, as you mentioned. So with oil coming up, there are concerns around jet fuel and around whether companies are actually hedged properly for Brent crude oil heading up, and therefore we are seeing airlines the weakest sector really in Europe today.
OK, so that's on airlines. What about energy stocks and how they're faring?
So energy getting a decent boost. So BP were up 1.4% on that one. Repsol as well gaining a similar amount. Equinor, all of the big names, the big oil companies getting a boost from the higher crude oil price. Bear in mind, crude spiked around 5.6% at the open of trading in Asia, but did come down a lot. As you've been discussing with your guests there, kind of the outlook is not actually that clear on whether this will impact the Strait of Hormuz and the actual supply of oil. Therefore, the crude price coming down to around 1.5%. And again, we're not seeing a massive move in energy, but it is still a move higher. And actually, energy, the best performing sector over the past month, given these issues around Iran and the Middle East. So energy stocks up around 9% across that index over the past month versus the actual broader index down around 2%. So we can see that outperformance, and that is continuing this morning.
Joe, what's happening with defence stocks in this environment?
So defence, this is one that's really difficult to call because we were seeing them higher on the Tradegate exchange, the exchange over in Germany that gets the early trading. So we saw Rheinmetall, BAE, Kongsberg, Saab, all of them gaining around 2 to 3% in that early trade, given these tensions are likely to potentially put further pressure on defence budgets. However, at the moment, they're actually declining. So we're seeing these stocks mostly lower by around 2% across the board. There's a note out from Citigroup saying that potentially this is all already priced in, and with an important summit coming up in The Hague over the next couple of days on NATO and on defence spending, if we only see NATO hitting that target of 3.5%, countries only committing to 3.5% of GDP plus a little bit extra on related spending, that might actually not be enough to lift the sector further. Therefore, although we've seen these attacks over the weekend, we're not actually seeing a positive move in defence stocks this morning, and therefore that's probably the most surprising part of the market today.
The Stock Movers Podcast from Bloomberg Radio. Check back with us throughout the day for the latest roundup of companies making news on Wall Street. And for the latest market-moving headlines, listen to Bloomberg Radio live. Catch us on YouTube, Bloomberg.com, and on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app.